Hi, I'm Carl Steinitz. I'm very sorry that I can't be with you at this event, but I had made a previous agreement to teach a workshop for several days to faculty and PhD students in Italy from several universities on collaborative design in a digital environment. I'm at the University of Cagliari, and this is my classroom. And it's a very interesting place, totally modern, well organized. But if you look up at the ceiling, you'll see that I'm at a very ancient university, and the acoustics here are the product of the domed ceiling. I've thought about the future of landscape architecture often, and I've actually written about it. I have my thoughts on the issue that faces you and us actually in preparing a declaration. One of my views is that there's a huge diversity of practice that generally focuses on what you're happy doing. Some of us work at this scale and size, some at this scale and size, some at this scale and size. But as a profession, the history of landscape architecture has changed in its emphases in size and scale, which is frankly the way I see things. Before we became a profession by name, there were people like Linné and Loudon, and then the beginnings of the profession in America, at least, with Olmsted, Manning, and others, that worked across these scales. I mean, Loudon made a plan for London, all of London. He also designed gardens. Linné made a plan for Potsdam, a landscape plan for Berlin, and many palace gardens. Olmsted designed a rose garden. He designed, managed and designed the landscape of the largest private estate in America. It's the foundation of modern forestry. Manning certainly designed grand gardens in the Midwest and in Massachusetts. He made a design for Birmingham, Alabama. He designed major highways, and he made a design for the entire United States of America. And these were people who had broad vision of what landscape architecture could do. But when they did these projects and studies at different scales and sizes, they did not work the same way. They didn't believe that the way you design here is going to be the way you design here. Now, there's an ebb and flow in our profession. It began with an idea that this is what landscape architects do. But in the 20s, the money was here. In the 30s, there was a split, with this being called planning, and this being called design, and this being the territory of planners, urban and regional planners, this being the territory of landscape architects. In the late 30s through the 50s, there was a very real ambiguity as to what landscape architects do, although they always did this. When I started teaching at Harvard in 1965, Hideo Sasaki and Chuck Harris made a very concerted effort to bridge the gap between both the concept of design and planning as it was recognized, wrongly in my view, and between the people, the human beings, in the planning department and in the landscape department, and people like Phil Lewis and Ian McHarg, who were very active at this scale, were involved in that discussion and were visiting critics in the first class that I ever taught. In the 70s, that division split. There was no more collaboration in the school, and most of the landscape architecture studios and activities moved back down into this scale, with a rhetoric that design and planning are different things. In the 90s, there was a frontal attack on landscape as hot territory by architects. The Barcelona World's Fair was a huge event in this because we started to have architects designing gardens, certainly designing parks, at the same time that landscape architecture studios were designing parks and streets and streetscapes and urban landscapes. In the recent years, I think that there's much more interest moving back up at this scale, and there's a very good reason. And that is, this is the sizes and scales where real issues occur in the world. Issues of terrible conditions that have to be improved. Issues of great differences in poverty and richness. Differences in urban growth. Differences in bad water, lack of food. And this, to some extent, becomes, frankly, in my opinion, nice but less relevant. So where are we now and what are we going to do? The first thing is, I need you to know that I'm not a great fan of declarations. I think that we join professions because we want to, because we see a need, not because somebody says it's really great. And I further think that things are changing much faster than the 50 years between the previous declaration and this one. I think we're seeing change at a generational time level. Technologically different, socially different, psychologically different, actually. I think there are four major options. The first major option is to do what we're doing right now and to continue. And that is lots of people working here, lots of people working here, less people working here, very much less working here, and very few working up here. Although I know people right now who are making a landscape plan for the United States of America. In other countries, it's roughly similar. And in some countries, there are no landscape architects, and architects, engineers here, geographers here is the theme. That's number one. Let's continue where we are. It's a perfectly healthy profession now, but what about the future? The second profession is that we actually disappear, professional possibility. And that is, you don't have to be a landscape architect professionally to design a garden. You don't. Architects are doing this all over the world. Geographers and engineers and bankers and lawyers are designing these landscapes. And people are doing their urbanization without us. There's every reason to expect that that'll continue. It's going to be a hard sell, actually, in much of the world to say, well, we're so valuable. The third possibility is that we retain this very foolish idea that there's a difference between planning and design. This is all design. It's design in the sense of a verb. That is, we have to be in a position to propose intentional change. And individuals, one landscape architect can do this very, very well. But there's no one person who can do this, and there's no one profession who can do this. This is by definition collaborative. This is by definition collaborative. This is not necessarily by definition collaborative. And our real professional problem in education and in practice is that we teach this way. We first give people small projects, then get them bigger ones, and then maybe get them bigger ones. But I think it's wrong. I think that we should first give people a sense of what the real issues are, make them work collaboratively, and then let them decide where they're happy working. Some of them will be happy working here. So I'm not in favor of a division, because that division will result in landscape architects getting smaller again, and others taking over what are the more important landscape issues, in my opinion. The fourth option is the one that I think is the right one. I think that we should see the world the way the founders of the profession of landscape architecture did, the way Linné, Olmsted, Loudon, and especially Manning actually did. And that is, we should educate our people and be prepared to practice in different ways, individually, to collaboratively, but in my opinion, more importantly, collaboratively in the future. Let me add that I see no reason why landscape architects should see themselves as the stewards of the landscape, or the protectors of the landscape, or the designers of the landscape. We're not the only ones with wisdom at this scale, or that scale. I think that we should recognize that we're in a world of increasing collaboration and increasing need, and that we should really think about what we're doing. I know many landscape architecture projects which I consider the problem rather than the solution. And I think we should avoid that situation. I think we should focus where society needs it the most, and I don't think it needs us the most here. I think it needs us the most here. That's my view. Thank you.